and indeed all soldiers to know what human rights laws are.
The timely intervention of security agencies restored law and order Tuesday at Wuse Market after a group of agitators tried to force its way into the market. However, normalcy has been restored. The market is expected to be open to business by Thursday.
This demonstration, which was carried out, caused a conflict of interest because there were different shades of opinion, and in the process there was breakdown of law and order, and in the wisdom of the entire FCT team, as directed by the Minister, the market was shut down to protect lives and properties.
Some group of people came in to protest, and definitely there are people of diverse opinion in the market, and there was clash of interest, and it resulted in a clash, and the police came in to forestall further breakdown of law and order.
In the meantime, Nigerian Television Authority has been commended for its citizen-centered service delivery. National Coordinator Service Compact, known as Servicom, gave the commendation when she paid a working visit and the Director General of the NTA, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad, in Abuja.
The actual scores of NTA from the point of view of the customers, of the service takers, they are doing a good job. The feedback we have from the street, we want to sustain healthy competition among staff, even within NTA.
The citizens are like customers. They have invested in this government and they have a right to reap the reward of that investment. So the government is working hard to provide the services, and we at NTA are protecting the very important and vital aspects of nationhood.
And to our last report now, violence against women is a complex social problem with far-reaching health consequences. There's therefore an advocacy and the need to change the fight from whispering to shouting to scare away prospective abusers. This was at the National Training for Leaders and Voices Against Violence.
We want to cry out because we are the mothers of these children. Whatever affects them affects us. And that's why we go along with them to see that we put them on the right path. They have a right to cry over any misdeeds that is meted upon them.
And I don't know why our culture or our society has so brought us so low. And there's this saying that when you train a girl, you have trained a nation. And that is true because the girl child grows into becoming a mother.
Well, that's the news. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Kingsley and Blaston right after the break. Stay with us.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
I'm downloading is on 95%.
It's still on.
Eh?
Introducing Introducing Airtel Unlimited Data Plans. Get Unlimited 10 for 10,000 Naira. Get Unlimited 15 for 15,000 Naira. And Unlimited 20 for 20,000 Naira. Unlimited data. Unlimited you.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
I feel alive, so alive when I'm with my best friends, indulging my G exotic taste of paradise. Irresistible, everywhere I go, G exotic. Nothing makes my drink more than when the mixer is delightful, G exotic. And after a long day, I wanna relax with the taste of my G exotic. Yeah, sinking and get lost. Taste of relaxation, too good not to share. The taste of affection. Oh, say I love the taste of G exotic. I love the taste of G exotic. Love the taste of G exotic. Nothing like the taste of my G exotic. I love the taste of G exotic. Nothing like the taste of my G exotic.
Oh, I love the taste.
G exotic nectar. I love the taste.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. Yes, for the business report, federal government is to ban the importation of fish as Nigeria's fish production hits 1 million tons. Details with Amina Najim.
Hello and welcome to Business News. We begin with the agricultural sector of the economy. Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria says Nigeria is not prone to air contamination crisis like in Europe and Asia. The national president of the association in a telephone interview stressed the need for the country to take advantage of the crisis to be among the world suppliers of the commodity. Nigeria produces an estimated 10.3 billion eggs annually, which makes the country the largest producer in Africa.
For now, we don't encourage the importation of poultry and poultry products into our country because for now, it may lead to, the introduction of foreign strains of the avian influenza virus, which we are controlling at the moment.
Meanwhile, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture says that the federal government will soon ban fish importation as Nigeria fish production hits 1 million tons.
When we came, we started reducing the quota that has been given to fish importers year by year in agreement with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
And reports on the global oil market indicate that the prices of the commodity remain steady on Tuesday after a sharp fall to the lowest in 3 weeks. Global benchmark Brent crude futures were up to 3 cents at $50.76. A stronger dollar tends to limit the demand for oil for buyers paying in other currencies. We now take a look at how the equities market fared on Tuesday. That concludes the business news segment on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Amina Nujain.
Thank you very much, Amina Nujain, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us, we'll go to the front pages of today's newspapers to check out the headlines.
I'd like to welcome Bayo Toyebi, our newspaper reviewer, as he joins us for today's edition. Good morning to you, Bayo.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, Kingsley, want me to kick off?
Yes, kick off.
All right, the Authority is the first paper I'm taking a look at. We'll start with the stories just above the nameplate. Ekpeazu Mons, Chief of Staff, says he served Abia well. That is a story trend on page 4. And still on page 4, there is a story on corruption. Federal government records 5,000 whistleblowers, says Minister. And still on page 4, there is another story. Quick notices are huge jokes. This is coming from the People's Democratic Party. And on Ozubulu attack, 44 victims get cash relief. But that story you find on page 2. Leading for the authority this morning, anti-Buhari's rally. Supporters, protesters clash. With 2 riders, journalists mobbed. Charlie Boy escapes. And there is another rider, Wuse Market shot indefinitely, but I think in our news, we already have a story that it will be open today. Family of 5 die after rice mill. That's the story just below the photograph you have there. 18 feared dead in auto crash. Quickly to another paper, the leadership. Just below the nameplate for the leadership, you have a DMO, that's the Debt Management Office, raising 5.2 billion naira from federal government of Nigeria savings bond in 5 months. With another rider, plans another 135 billion naira auction. That story starts right there but continues on page 10. But instead, you have a story on insecurity. Boko Haram in renewed onslaught. Army launches special strike force. The story you find on page 4. Nigeria to save 300 billion naira annually from rice import as production hits 15 million tons, and federal government to stop issuance of fish importation quota. This is coming from the minister. All the details on page 8. Kingsley.
Let's go to the front page of this day newspaper. The lead story for this day, it's on the anti-corruption efforts of the government, and it says that's the bottom half of the front page of this day newspaper. It says, federal government receives 365 actionable tips from whistleblowers. The federal government receives 365 actionable tips from whistleblowers, with a rider, investigative agencies to embark on tour of Australia. Are you?
The end of the world.
Yeah, that's right. That's the end of the world, by the way. It's, below that, it's the story on ongoing strike by ASU. It says, federal government appeals to ASU to suspend strike and reaches accord on audit of 30 billion naira. That story is in greater detail on page 12. Now, moving up again, they just say above the nameplate of this day newspaper, two other headlines were taken from there. Forex, that's on the economy. CBN takes further step to crash parallel market rate and directs banks to fund port charges incurred by oil marketers. Below that, a story similar to what Blessing read earlier. Boko Haram renews attacks on Adamawa communities. Over 20 killed by suicide bombers in Borno. That's on page 50 in greater detail for this day. And lastly, on the front page there for this day, is about Amechi, as transport minister, defends costs of Chinese-funded railway projects. Says they are cheaper than Kenya rail line per kilometer.
That's comparative cost analysis. Well, let's start with the ASU strike. The federal government has urged ASU to suspend their strike in the interest of Nigeria. This was at a meeting that was held between the Minister of Employment and Labor and Employment with the officials of the Academic Staff Union of Nigeria University. The observations that came from there was that government was working to resolve the outstanding issues. Specifically, the 13th February Babalaki Committee was still an issue. It was also observed that ASU did not give the 15-day mandatory notice required in instances of trade dispute. The office of the minister noticed that it received a letter about a strike on 14th of August, while the strike had already taken place on 13th of August. Meanwhile, some universities have already shut down activities, while others are still waiting for the Congress to meet before they will decide on the way out. But I have a concern here, first as a former student and also as a parent. And I think even the lecturers themselves who are on strike share this perspective as former students and as parents. Why is this strike coming at the end of the academic session when some students are expected to graduate?
Right. Exactly.
It is completely punishing the students for a situation they have no responsibility for. Students who are supposed to graduate and go to youth corps will have to wait until the resumption comes. Students who are supposed to do the examinations will now have to wait until resumption before the examination. And as psychologists and as teachers, they know what could happen to the students if this gap comes in between. It's fair that, yes, what is right and due to them should be demanded, but time is also of essence, and this is what I find worrying. The other story.
Well, the point you just raised, a very significant point, no question about that. And what we have seen in recent years is that the number of universities, in particular tertiary institutions, have tried to restabilize the academic calendar to run from September to June, as we used to have it in the past, or October thereabout, to June. Now, this is going to create quite some disruption. I think that it's also the responsibility of the members of ASU, not just the Executive Council members. Yes, you have a mandate as Executive Council members to act on behalf of the larger constituency that you have. But do you oftentimes reach back to them to say, listen, what do we do? What is the best time to do this? How do we otherwise also make
step into some of those areas that they have looked into before? That is another area. The meeting ending in the deadlock is what Independence is reporting, just above the nameplate. Also, federal government meeting ends in deadlock. You find more details on page 5. Bulletin for the Independent newspaper this morning. Commission promotes 6,000 police officers with a rider. Suspends special promotion over bribery allegation. Details, page 4. Now, EFCC, that's just to the left-hand corner of the paper. EFCC begins probe of failed federal road projects in Southeast. That story starting there, continues on page 4. And just as we read in some of the papers earlier, anti-Buhari protests, Charlie Boy, others escape death at Wuse Market. And the photograph you have there is that of the incident. Some youth on rampage during attack on Charlie Boy and members of Resume or Resign group at Wuse Market in Abuja on Tuesday. Government officials attempted to undermine Osubaju. This is coming from the presidency. All the details you find on page 4.
All right, let's take Daily Trust. Daily Trust has some of the other stories, but it has an exclusive, which it also illustrates, and that exclusive is late, and it comes with a kicker: building collapse, 272 killed in 17 months. Let's go to the illustration right there, also on the front. That's in the middle of the page of front page of Daily Trust. You can see what the numbers are: 272 killed. That's total number of persons killed, and then 141 plus total number of persons who have been injured. To the right of that, it said total number of incidents, 43 of them, and then total number of states captured, 17 states. So you have 17 states that have been captured in this report, and 43 incidents, fatalities, 272, and injuries well over 140. And you can see the illustration there, the red patches indicating the states where the incidents have occurred, together with the figures there. Now, the reasons for the collapse by experts are also highlighted by the paper. It says participation of quacks in the construction industry, use of cheap and substandard materials, and reduction of required amount needed to make a standard building, plus the fact that there are no government approvers.
Yes.
Some of the structures.
Daily Trust is quite good at what I can describe as data at a glance. That's right. And it captures all those things. But the other talk of the nation now is the situation yesterday at Wuse Market. There are conflicting reports that the Resume or Resign group went with motorcycles to the Wuse Market. They were prevented by the security at the market from entry, or they forcefully gained entry. And this led to some traders, others say miscreants within the market, shouting "Say Baba," and conflict was about to ensue. The lesson to learn from this is that protest, yes, it is a fundamental right to have a right to protest in a democracy. But in other democracies, the system is that you give notice about your protest to security agencies. In fact, you are supposed to indicate the root part of your protest. This will help them to provide security so that if there are others who are also protesting, they will avoid conflict. A typical example was, for instance, during the inauguration of President Donald Trump, people gave indication that they were going to protest against the inauguration. They gave their part, and the security provided exclusively that they would not be allowed onto Pennsylvania Avenue, but they could demonstrate elsewhere. Right. This is to avoid clash. A marketplace is not a place to take a protest, because hoodlums would take advantage of it and rob people of their properties in the market. Apart from that, you have traders who are of diverse backgrounds.
Exactly.
And the tendency to have ethnic degeneration of the simple protest, which they have a right to, occurring in the market, could not be avoided. There are conflicting reports. Some say they went there in a car, the cars were destroyed. Some say they went there in motorcycles. At the end of the day, hoodlums took over things, and police had to disperse them.
Yeah,
so we need to learn lessons from this.
Absolutely. By the point you just made with regard to the proper locus for protests or demonstrations, peaceful. Otherwise, it's a marketplace, the right place for that. As you just indicated, the answer obviously is no.
No, certainly no.
All right, so that's the much that we can take with regard to our newspaper review this morning. Bayatoyebe, we'd like to thank you for being with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be taking the concluding segment of our three-day conversation now on national unity and stability.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Marriage is a union between a spouse and the spouse of the spouse and the family of the spouse.
You're not only married to your husband, but to his brothers and sisters.
Oh yes, but only where that is sensibly convenient. Don't get it twisted. Marriage is as sweet as you make your home for your partner. He or she is not your slave or a workhorse, there to serve your brothers, sisters, and relatives to her own detriment or his own detriment.
It is foolery of you to have allowed your family members cause catastrophic quagmire of epic proportions in your marriage.
So says Professor John Bull, your rib-cracking comedy in this episode titled Married to Family.
They want to take advantage of my Philomena.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
Yes, in the last 2 days, it's been discussion on the quest for national unity and stability. Now, as the third part of our discussion takes off in a moment, we'd like to start this discussion with some excerpt on the part 2. That is the one that happened yesterday, to take a look at some of those reactions, and we'll start our conversation in earnest.
We prefer to consider ourselves first instead of the nation, and you can see that all along, even when we talk about federal character, for example, once it gets to the state level, it just stops at that. It doesn't permeate to the local and world levels, and probably the different ethnicities that exist there. And the very fact that we have a federal character itself suggests that it keeps reminding us that we are different from each other. And how do you promote amalgamation when at every time you are supposed to identify yourself as coming from one area or the other? When you are so treated as well.
I would say that we need strong institutions that are collective, that are Nigerian in nature. We also need a national identity, something that is more fundamental than, I am an Igbo, I'm a Yoruba, and, Hausa, Fulani. Who are we? So if you ask a Nigerian who they are, it should be much more uniting than something that is sectional or tribal. Nigerians, I also would say that we need a system. I think Hajia, kind of touched on it when she talked about leveling the playing field. I think that we need a system that says to every Nigerian that they can be whatever they dream to be, whatever they want to become, and that there will be no gateways.
The first and major fundamental is governance and governance structures. People in government, institutions of government, they themselves, when I'm saying institutions of government, I'm talking about the presidency, the military, the academia, those institutions of government that should enforce patriotism in citizens have gone to sleep with it. In fact, they themselves are promoting a kind of pariah status, disintegrated country in their body language, in the way the governance is monitored. And the citizens are beginning to think, truly, do we have a country where we should give our best and be more patriotic? So the product is that even in the classroom, you have people already divided along lines of religion, which is another strong factor. People, rather than do governance, people play religion in government, and it tends to divide people, polarize the country into two major divides, forgetting that there are other religions in the country that can live peacefully. The other one is the ethnicity. Now, when governance structure begins to fail, people will begin to think that because this man is not my brother from my region, I should not give him a chance to exist in a system. So if you go to the institutions of government, even the international oil companies, even the very parastatals of government, you find out that if a man, for instance, is the director of a place and is an German, he will quickly begin to mobilize the job people around to fill in the spaces available. If he was a Hausa Fulani man, he would do the same thing. If he was an Igbo man, he would do the same thing. I'll go and check what I'm saying now is happening right now. And we're talking about national integration.
We should wake up from our slumber and stop having a deceitful governance. That is just it. This deceitful governance leads to wrong structure, wrong allocation of resources, ill use of everything we have. In Nigeria, where a northerner will be a special advisor to a governor in the south, or a southern person will be a commissioner in any northern state. If a Nigerian can win election in other parts of the world, if Nigerians can win election in America and other parts of the world, why can't we integrate?
We're set. Now joining us to discuss the issue for today, which is still continuing national unity and stability, we'd like to welcome at this point Senator Ibrahim Ida, Damajan Katsina. Senator Ibrahim Ida is a member, or was a member of the 6th Senate representing Katsina Central District of Katsina State, and a former Federal Permanent Secretary. We'd like to welcome Senator Ida to the program.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us here in Abuja, we'd like to welcome also Mr. Daria Awoniyi. Mr. Awoniyi is a development consultant. We'd like to say thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and Kingsley, we have another guest from other centers.
All right, let's go first to our Lagos Network Studios, where we have Professor Sophie Oluwole, who is joining us right there, Professor of Philosophy. Professor Sophie Oluwole, it's our pleasure to have you. She's also chair of Center for African Culture and Development. Professor Oluwole, I'd like to have you join us on the program this morning.
Very much for giving me the opportunity.
All right, and then from our Just Network Center, we have a consultant, writer, and public affairs analyst, Mr. Chris Ngwodo. Mr. Ngwodo, a pleasure that you are with us on the program this morning. All right, and then we go over now to our Benin Network Center, where we are being joined by a familiar face, the king of political bombast. But of course, this morning, he's right there with us in our Benin Network Center, Honorable Patrick Obahiagbo, otherwise known as Igodo Migodo. He was a member of the House of Representatives. At some point, he was also a member of the Edo House of Assembly, and lately he was Chief of Staff to the Edo State Governor. Honorable Patrick Obahiagbo, it's our delight that you are with us on the program this morning. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Please say hello to our viewers.
Pleasure this morning to be with Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you, Kingsley Sadolo.
All right, so let's get down to serious business. We, of course, have been discussing this subject matter for the past 3 days. We had 2 editions, one on Monday and then another one on Tuesday, and you had the benefit of the excerpts of the discussions that took place yesterday. Now, the first question, to pose, Professor and gentlemen, is as follows. Why is it that the subject of national unity and stability is recurrent? Couldn't we have reached a state where we have leapfrogged the issue of national unity, national stability? Some of our guests have indicated that it is because there are problems with the nation's unity and stability. That's why they are not going away. Let's begin with Senator Ida.
Thank you very much. Well, I think, you are talking as if it is a new phenomenon. It is not. It has been a recurring decimal in the political and constitutional history of Nigeria. Right from the onset, the amalgamation itself was not based on any clearly defined parameters, rather an administrative convenience. Now, over the years, every constitution had created a problem that can always be addressed in the minds of the populace only through another constitutional amendment. You see, we have 3 fault lines in Nigerian politics: geography, faith, and ethnicity. Now, the elites have always been playing these fault lines to get a relative advantage. Whichever one will really give them advantages, they now play it. Now, you will find out that, look, now we are talking of restructuring. As I said, is it now? No. It has been there all the time. Indeed, we are talking of secession. Is it a new thing that has come either in 67 or now? No. It has always been there. Indeed, in fact, the first official pronouncement of a need to secede, or of the desire, if things are not going well, to secede, was really after the 1953-1954 conferences, wherein when the late Tony Anohoro got up to say that Nigeria should get independence by 1956, the North said no, it should be maybe one practicable. The Northern delegates were booed, were called, and they left. And then the North then decided that, no, what the hell, we will go away. So really you find that that is when it started. Now, over the years, with every successive change in regime, there has always been a feeling of either dominance or discrimination or marginalization. And each side that feels so marginalized or so dominated feel that the best way is really to have their own segment of the country. So really, you find out that this issue has been on and will continue to be on.
Is this a problem?
It is. It is really a problem. Why? Because ab initio, the federation itself was not made up of federating units. It was simply a structure made by fiat. With the result that whenever you feel, if you have somebody at the center and there is to be a restructuring, you get an advantage. Because why? You can influence for either your people to be dominant in a particular state or to get your own local government where you will be. But then the discrimination is perpetuated. With the result that you find out that it is a problem, it will continue to be a problem, unless, of course, there is the proper restructuring, as they say. And as you say, maybe over the time, I will say what all my own ideas are on really how to go about addressing this problem.
All right, Senator Ida, thank you very much there for your opening salvos. Let's bring in Mr. Daria Awoniyi now. Mr. Daria Awoniyi, the recurrent issue of national unity and stability.
Thank you very much. As Senator Ida said, there is a history. The history is just given. If you ask most, even educated Nigerians, they don't know the history. They don't know that history. Because in Nigeria, we don't emphasize our history and we don't learn from it. We must understand some things, that what we normally do in this country is to just copy what somebody else is doing and slap it on our people or on our structure, on our system, and whatever comes out of it,
we continue with it and keep struggling with it. This issue of national unity, first of all, unity in itself, per se, in the way Nigerians want it, has never been achieved by any country. There's always divisions. But what we have done is to take what should be differences and turn them to divisions. Whereas in other countries, what are differences have been accepted as differences and has been honored, and they have been left as differences. I am different. You are different. There is no way we can change the fact that of our ethnic backgrounds. We are not going to unite and become one tribe. We are not going to unite and become one religion. Even the geography itself, we might move from place to place, but in actual fact, you invariably want to settle in one area. But our people have never been taught that there is something better than what we have been offered. Because we don't look at our history, we don't plan from our history, we don't have structures, we don't have mutual principles, we don't have mutual values. And this cannot come in by negotiation of communities, because I want to simplify it and say communities. I don't want to use tribes, but because even within the structure of tribes, there are differences. Even within what we call homogeneous tribes, there are huge divisions. The negotiation is in the individual, for the individual. The reason why a man can leave Nigeria, leave any part of the world and get to America, stay 2-3 years in America, 4-5 years, get an American, whatever they call it, green card, and feel American. Go to Britain and feel British and become British. And even want to, he becomes patriotic about that country. It's because the individual is taken care of. Here, the center is too powerful. And what we have that disunites Nigeria, the vice president, acting president, gave a very, very, very concise, or simplified version of it, when he said it is because people are looking for appointments and performing. But in reality, he's correct. What he has done is he oversimplified it.
That statement has been corrected.
Okay.
Yeah, that report has been corrected.
Okay. But the truth of the matter is that it is about the nature of the Nigerian, who is driven, a high achiever, but he thinks he's not part of the system. He therefore develops a sense of entitlement. It is that sense of entitlement that has driven all the issues of disunity that we have, because people do not feel that they belong.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Awoni. Now let's go over to Lagos, where we earlier introduced Professor Sophie Oluwole. Professor Oluwole, yes, there are issues of foundation. Faulty foundation has been itemized by different people and their different positions. But then we've also had countries that have evolved, much like Nigeria has done, and they're actually making progress. Should this line of argument over faulty foundation still subsist?
Thank you very much. I think we should look at the topic we are discussing, national stability. What does the word nation mean? By my own philosophical understanding, a nation is a group of people with one language. Nigeria is a state, but not nation in that sense. We have over 300 languages in Nigeria. We are together. So I think the problem is we cannot ignore these fundamental original differences. But since we are together, how can we come together? How can we unite? How can we be stable? It is not by overstressing one point, one group, call it a sentiment, ethnic sentiment. These are realistic features of the politics today. Nigeria has many people with different languages who differ in number of population and so on. But since we have to go together, negotiation, discussing our interests must come together. For example, it is noted that a state is giving 40 local governments, where another one is giving only 4. The reaction will be, you are cheating us. What I'm saying, stability must be understanding each other, coming together, not by force, but by sitting together and reaching and negotiating. give and take. The government we have today is imposed on us by the British people. Lugard put us together in 1914, not by asking whether we want to stay together or on what terms. We find ourselves, and we have been running around without actually addressing this question of differences, but which does not mean we cannot unite. Although we differ, we must work together, we must understand ourselves, otherwise negotiation must come, stability must come, but it cannot be forced by saying one group is greater or one group is small. We have not addressed the issue. We are just running government without addressing the conditions of stability and unity.
Thank you very much, Professor Oluwole. Okay, now to our Benin studio, Honorable Patrick Obayagbo. Yes, the question whether the unity is negotiable has always been there. Now, is our unity really a burden for us, judging from what different opinions that have been coming across? In the last 3 days, people have talked about leadership, people have talked about structures and other means that we need to actually do to stabilize our nation. Is the question for unity a burden, really?
Of course, it will bother any compos mentis Homo sapien who is a Nigerian, you know. But let me start by saying that the foncet origo for why Nigeria is today quagmired, or if you like, quarantined in a labyrinthian bind, or if you further like, a cul-de-sac of Penelopic disunity and instability, can be traceable to a vaudeville of reasons. But if you give me the indulgence of time, I will race through about 4 or 5 reasons with ceaseless staccato. We cannot begin to dilate this topic without first of all tracing the reason to what I would like to stigmatize as the challenge of our historical colonial legacy. When the colonial masters amalgamated the north and southern Nigeria into Nigeria, they didn't do it to satiate the Pax Nigeriana of our dreams. No, 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 no. It was to masturbate and to mollycoddle their imperialistic ego and obesity. Little reason, therefore, that they apotheosized our centrifugal fault lines. The North and the South lived as different countries, whereas in other large British colonies, such as in India and Sudan, where they had just one single administrative system, in Nigeria, we had 2 administrative systems, one in the north, one in the south. We had different judicial systems, different land tenure systems, different educational systems. This, of course, created a feeling of mutual suspicion, and they deliberately put in place a machinery to emphasize our regional disparities. Little reason, therefore, that even during the decolonization struggle, nationalists fought themselves more corrosively, more acerbically, and more virulently than they even fought the colonial masters. Reason, therefore, you will not be maniacally bewildered that when a simple issue like self-government motion was tabled, it generated mutual suspicion. That, of course, was the genealogy of the distrust and mutual suspicion we had in the country. It was a carryover to the politics of the First Republic. And we, of course, witnessed the politics of medicinal statism and gangrenous tribalism that pulverized the First Republic. The second reason I want to bring under focal biceps and biceps is the menace that Christianity and Islamism has played. It has constituted a problem of nation building. The truth must be told. We have a country of about 250 ethnic groups that qualify for nationalities in themselves. As if this is not enough, Christians and Muslims have decided to look upon themselves as rivals, struggling for religious hegemony and struggling for political supremacy. In a bid, therefore, to protect their imagined or real religious and political space, they have frequent resort to ethnic and religious militias. They arm these militias in such a way and manner that these militias now become parallel security outfits. They oil them and the political class manipulate them. I think the time has come in this country where there must be a serious colloquy, or if you like, a serious conversation between Christians and Muslims. The country Nigeria does not stop with Christianity and Islamism. The third reason I want to bring under focal biceps and biceps is what I would call corruption. If you like, call it defalcation. If you like, call it malversation, bad leadership, and allied vices such as our stigmatic political elites. Since 1960, but most especially since the Second Republic, we have had in the main politics of prebendalism, politics of patrimonialism, philistinism, parasitism, bunkerism. We don't only have oil bunkers, we equally have political bunkers. And they have seized the ship of state, captured the ship of state. Public resources have been criminally privatized in service of private ends and their cronies, or what one scholar called their subaltern clients. Little reason, therefore, that since 1960 up to today, a microscopic minority of this country continue to swim in the waters of Epicureanism and hedonism, while a preponderant number of Nigerians wallow in a marshmallow of disease, squalor, poverty. And at times, this vast majority of Nigerians vacillate between exorbitant enthusiasm and irrational irritability. Are you surprised, therefore, if the aftermath of this dysfunctional state, where macroeconomic policies will not work, will occasion restiveness, youth restiveness, will occasion instability, and will occasion cause for separatism? These are necessary concomitants of leadership failure.
All right, that's from our Benin Network studio, Honorable Patrick Bayagma. We introduced him earlier. He's the king of political bombast. So we're taking a short break now from his ceaseless staccato, as he himself had indicated. And then Blessing, of course, he talked about raised a number of points, quite aside from what is very well known for gangrenous ethnicity, political bunkers, Epicureanism, and then hedonism, and so on and so forth. All of that, of course, in the context of what he finds as the causative factors of the challenges that Nigeria faces with regard to national unity and stability. Let's go over now to our Just Network studios, where we are now introduced Mr. Chris Nwodo. Mr. Chris Nwodo, I'm sure that you are relieved that we are coming to you after the ceaseless staccato that we heard from Honorable Patrick Obahiagbo. But let's get your own thoughts on the issues with regard to the challenges of national unity and ethnicity. Why is it that this remains, a topic that we have not been able to overcome and then get face to face, as it were, get to grips with issues of development and then be real world beaters that we ordinarily should be?
Thank you very much. I would like to approach this issue from three different angles. First, I'll take a different tack and propose that Nigerians are not as divided as people think ordinarily, or as might apparently be the case. Nigerians are not viscerally antagonistic. Most Nigerians, anyway, are not viscerally antagonistic of people of other ethnicities or people of other religions. I do not believe that to be the case. And if that were the case, the country would have ceased to exist a while back. I think what you will find instead is that we have created a system that makes identity, religious and ethnic identity, the key of access to social and economic opportunity. So whereas a normal Nigerian who's raised normally in an urban space, for example, enters society willing to integrate, willing to mix, willing to mingle with people of different faiths, the moment he steps into a dimension where social opportunity or economic opportunity is at stake, he is compelled to adopt the garments of either his religious identity or his ethnic identity, because these are the keys of access to those opportunities. So, for example, something as simple and as commonplace as the state of origin clause, for example, or the indigene settler dichotomy. And few people walk around thinking of themselves consciously as indigenes. That identity only matters when social opportunity or economic opportunity is at stake. So it is not that Nigerians in and of themselves, or most of them, are viscerally antagonistic of people of other ethnic identities or other religious identities. I do not believe that to be the case. I think that what has happened is this system, this political economy that we have created, compels Nigerians, particularly in the age of scarce economic resources, in the age of scarce social and economic opportunities. It compels Nigerians to become tribalistic, or to become ethnocentric, or to become religious chauvinists, if that is what it will take to climb up the ladder of social mobility. So if you have a system that says to you that your advancement or your entry into official bureaucracy and your advancement up the ladder depends upon having the right ethnicity, speaking the right language, speaking or having the right religion, then those are the factors that will become predominant. If identity politics is rampant in a place, it means that identity politics is what is being rewarded. Because the sort of politics you have in a country is the sort of politics that is being rewarded. So if we have polarizing politics, then it is because the system itself incentivizes polarizing behavior, it incentivizes and rewards polarizing conduct. It rewards divisive behavior. So people do not start out trying to be divisive. But when they enter this society and they see that what it takes, what the political order ordains, is a measure of division, a measure of bigotry and chauvinism even, in order to advance, then they adopt that behavior. The second thing I would like to point out is, if we go back in history a bit, at the end of the Civil War, the elite consensus that emerged created a political system based on the idea that elites from different regional blocks, different subnational blocks, could come to the center and share the national cake on behalf of those subnational constituencies, whether they're ethnic blocks or they're religious blocks or they're regional blocks. So that in itself built in a dynamic of competition between groups. So the nature of political competition that we have in this country emphasizes those differences. In fact, it does not just emphasize them, it weaponizes them. So if you have a particular identity, at any given time, your faith or your ethnicity is either a weapon of advantage or is a weakness. It becomes a disadvantage that can be used against you. Now, what has happened is, from the 70s to the 80s, this system might have been sustainable. But since the 70s, Nigeria's population has quadrupled, and the economy has remained a mono-resource economy. So what that means, in effect, is that you have many more mouths, but the contents of the pots, as it were, have shrunk progressively. And that has only intensified the competition for economic resources. And as this competition intensifies, people are retreating further into their ethnic groups, into their religious groups, into the subnational units that they feel can best give them an advantage. So the system is unsustainable. The elite consensus itself has expired because you have too many people now that need economic opportunity, that need social opportunity to advance, and it is not getting to them. So by and by, that consensus has gone as far as it can go. It has spread benefits as broadly as it can. But relative to the population that we have, it is not enough. This is a country of 160 million people, approximately. More than 70% of this number are under 35. So that means you have far more people that are younger who are seeking social and economic opportunity. So the crumbs, what we conceived initially as a trickle-down political economy, where the benefits would trickle down from the elites and, percolate down to the subnational constituencies or to their ethnic communities, is simply not sustainable. We are not producing enough as a nation to sustain the population that we have. So once you have the question of, once economic resources and social opportunity become scarce, once poverty deepens, then people become more fanatical and more fundamentalist about subnational identities, whether it is ethnic or it is religious. The third angle I would like us to look at this from is how we even interpret the problem itself, how we look at the problem itself. There is a narrative that is popular, and that feeds into how we interpret the problem. Because having a problem is one thing, but to conceive of it in a certain way might be equally problematic. And it is the myth of Nigerian exceptionalism. It is the idea that because Nigeria was brought into being by colonialists, it is somehow different, it is somehow unique, and all of that. This is just self-evidently false. Nigeria is not the only nation that was created by colonialists. India was created by colonialists. Countries in the Middle East were created by colonialists. All over Africa, all over Latin America, you will find countries that were created by colonialists. There is nothing unique about Nigeria in that regard. Our failure has been to produce a nation-building elite, an elite with a nation-building aptitude, a nation-building intelligence. Now, people often quote the words of Obafemi Awolowo, and they say things like, Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. The full quote would be, Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. Nigeria is not a nation in the same sense as the French people, France or Wales or England, etc., etc. Now, people have taken this, it's probably the most popular mantra you will hear about the Nigerian condition. But again, this statement in itself is false. France, for example, which Obafemi Awolowo cited in his book, The Path to Nigerian Freedom, France is a multi-ethnic country. At the time of the French Revolution, only 12% of France actually spoke French. So having the same language is not what makes for a nation. Having the same ethnicity is not what makes for a nation. As a matter of fact, ethnic homogeneity is not a requirement for nationhood. Less than 30% of the world's nations, of the countries of the world, are ethnically homogeneous. And ethnic homogeneity, even where you have it, is not necessarily a panacea for the problems of nation building. So one of the most popular examples of an ethnically homogeneous nation is Somalia. Somalia is 100% Somali. That's the ethnic group. They speak that same language. It is religiously homogeneous. It is Sunni Islam, not just Islam, but Sunni Islam. And yet, Somalia is the poster child for failed statehood the world over. So that is to say to you that the narrative we have chosen about our country is equally problematic. And this is important because it now shapes the kind of approaches that we use when discussing Nigeria, or indeed when we want to solve the problem. I think that the issue here is where you have plurality, where you have diversity. One of the most important things that a state or a government can do, even along with civil society, is to promote justice, social justice, and social mobility. Those two things. You have to promote social justice, very important. People have to feel that they are bound by the same rules. And at the same time, you have to promote social mobility. So people have to have the expectation, the hope that they can legitimately change the material circumstances of their birth. So somebody that is born to fishermen or carpenters or artisans can one day rise to become prime minister or president. This is very important because without hope, people cannot sustain a nation and they cannot sustain democracy. So where this hope of self-actualization is evaporating, what you're seeing now is in place of self-actualization, you're having all kinds of movements coming up preaching self-determination. Because you see, a nation does not exist as an end in itself. A nation must enable people to self-actualize. If the individual is not self-actualizing, if he is not realizing his potential, he will seek other political, socio-political arrangements that will enable him self-actualize. That is why you have brain drain. That is why Nigeria's best and brightest over the last 30 to 40 years have left the country. Now, for those that cannot leave, what they are saying is we will create our own homeland. However fantastic, however ridiculous the idea, we will create our own separate socio-political space so that we can thrive in that space. So these are the issues, and these are the ways in which I would choose to address these issues.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chris Ngodo. Now we'll take a break to actually have a feel of some of those areas that people are actually different. I'm sure viewers will be joining us very soon via our Twitter handle at NTAGMN is right there on your screen. And we'll take a look at some other areas of promoting what exactly is the vision that Nigeria wants for itself and our people. That will be after this break.
All right, welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's a pretty interesting edition, as always, of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, Nigerian Television Authority. Where, as you can see from the screen, this is the third part of our discussion on national unity and stability. We have 5 guests, 2 of them with us in the Abuja studios, and then 3, of course, at remote locations. For Honorable Patrick Obayagmo, Igodomigodo, Benin Network Center. Professor Sophie Oluwole, that's Professor of Philosophy, Lagos Network Center. Chris Ngodo, also with us at our Jos Network studios. And before we went on that short break, according to my colleague, we had a number of points that have been articulated by the 5 guests that we have. But in the meantime, as we also indicated, the conversation, it's very interesting because we have a number of reactions coming in already from our viewers. Let's take some of those tweets that have come in through the Twitter handle. You can see it on the screen there at NTAGMN.
Let's start with that from Daily Jack Solomon. He says, we must build Nigeria because nation building never stops. And true nation builder never rests because all nations are constantly facing up to new challenges. We implore all Nigerians to create a real spirit of nationhood And the willingness of every stakeholder is to build a united, stable, and cohesive nation.
Mike Ayako tweets, a country that invests in the youth, invests in the future, that the youths have the potential to effect changes that can bring unity to a nation.
And
now, it says the Nigerian unity is greatly impaired by, excuse me, youth restiveness. They have no jobs, they are used as thugs and tribal warlords. Big shame.
From Festus Akimboyewa is this tweet. The goal of every Nigerian, and especially political leaders, should be to build bridges and cement relationships wherever they are in Nigeria. Everyone and every part of Nigeria should be given equal opportunities to participate in building the nation of Nigeria as equal partners.
Alfred Raymond Coker tweets, what makes the preaching towards unity in Nigeria a farce and a hoax is that the component bodies don't see the we, but the I. It's the root problem.
From Bello Sabo is this tweet. You can't have national unity and integration when tribes declare war against each other and the DSS and police keep quiet.
Edu Austin tweets, regions that produce 70% of the country's revenue are shortchanged. This injustice should be addressed in the restructuring process for peace.
Sani Michael Mokaji has this tweet, and his own concern is, NTA, kudos to you for your guys, for the good work you are doing. But how many people have light to watch your awareness campaign?
All right, Emmanuel George tweets, says unity can only happen if masters allow their subjects to benefit from the process nature has given them.
From Umek Chimeze, say good morning, Kingsley and Claire. My name is Blessing. It is necessary that the elites are invited to be part of this discussion.
And they are here, by the way. Some of the elite class, Senator Ida, Mr. Awuni, and all the other guests, all the guests that we've had, including you, of course, who is watching over there. Bayo Adebayo tweets. It says you always bring elites who say something and do another for their selfish end rather than any of the masses who are directly involved.
Clifford Agugwese says political parties have contributed to the rot by enthroning men and women who have little or no regard for principles of morals-led governance. Watch and see, sorry, Kingsley. Yeah, watch and see how their primaries will go. It's either zoning or religion and other banal considerations.
Edu Augustine again says the common man also has a stake in the restructuring process. It's high time Good Morning Nigeria brought people like market women and men, etc., to also put their views forward.
Emmanuel George says unity is about union and unification. It can be achieved if sovereign regions are equally represented in governance of the state.
And then Mohammed Satomi tweets, says Nigerian politicians are a threat to peaceful coexistence of this country.
And we have another one from Sakiru, says NTA should take the messages of its guests to the presidency to comply. Regional restructuring is to divide Nigeria.
All right, now those are the first set of tweets that we are taking, and then, gentlemen, to return to our Professor Lady at our Lagos Network Studios, to return to our guests, who are discussing this matter. Obviously, I mean, there's some total of what has been said so far in terms of the historical antecedents that we have faced, that we have had to deal with regard to the nation's unity and ongoing stability challenges, boiled down ultimately to the management of the political economy. Yeah. And since Monday, we've had this discussion. The elite class has been tapped as being a failure in nation building and therefore seeking to enhance national unity and stability. Some of the issues we talk about, that's included Mr. Chris Ngwodo, religious and ethnic identity, as being part of the access, to social and economic opportunities. What, again, Senator Ida, let's come to you, because at the end of the day, you have the elite class all over the country, whether bureaucratic, technocratic, political, business, or otherwise. What can the elite class now begin to do? Seeing, as Chris Uwodo had said, that the elite consensus, and I mean, personally, I agree with him, the elite consensus that was forged after the end of the Civil War, which also tended to have coincided with the steep rise in oil prices and therefore the oil economy, that consensus has since collapsed. We're faced with an exploding population, opportunities are shrinking, and then you have all kinds of symptomatic reactions, brain drain, agitations, and so on and so forth. When can we begin to see a change in terms of the elite thinking with regard to what the elite class needs to do for the aggregate stakeholders as well as nation building that will therefore conduce to national unity and stability? Let's begin with Senator Oda.
First of all, I want to disagree slightly with the gentleman in Jos. It was not really after the Civil War that the issue of elite consensus came into being and later dissipated. No. It started well before then. Indeed, that was really why we always, in Nigeria, we always try to adopt a system which we feel will be unique to us and will address our problems. I'll give you an example. You see, the 1960 Constitution, which really brought about the independence, ordinarily, in a parliamentary system, parliament is supreme. But because of the interplay, the elites' conflict, and the lack of consensus, our constitution made the constitution to be supreme. So really we had more or less a constitutional supremacy rather than people's supremacy, because if parliament had been supreme. Why? Because even at that time, the division, the allocation of seats was made on the basis of certain indices that some people felt that if allowed to go naturally, it would be against their own interest. So the elite, consensus to champion particular interests or personal interests or their communal interests or ethnic or religious interests had always been there, really. Two, you see, when we are discussing national issues, we always talk of they and us, the elites and the general populace, quite forgetting that it is from the generality of the people that really the elites emerge. And two, that the elites are always feeling that they are doing something for the generality of the people. So really, if we want to forge a national unity, if we want to create a nation, with that dichotomy or that division has to go. We all have to think as Nigerians. In fact, everywhere, the example made, take United Kingdom, for instance. As it were, now the agitation by the Scots to go on their way is there. So the issue of problem of unity, what you see in the surface, or on the surface, is not necessarily what goes in, what is underneath. Now, you see, somebody has said, and I agree with him, that the Nigerian people, the general Nigerian people, are very accommodating of each other. They are ready to live and stay in peace with each other. What is required is really the change in the mindset, a paradigm shift in the way we think, in the way we act, in the way we come to think that as human beings we are transient. I mean, we all are living at a particular time and we will go. That it is really the structures that we build that will ultimately see to what the nation becomes in the ultimate.
Now, I'm sorry, distinguished Senator.
Yes.
The point, again, just to steer you back to some of the points made by the other guests, in particular Chris Ngodo from Jos. You said the way we behave, the way we respond to issues, because these are the ones that will then have a knock-on effect, whether there will be national unity, whether there will be stability, or otherwise. And it says, look, what we are seeing in terms of our behavioral disposition is identity. The question of ethnic identity, religious identity, in competition for social or economic opportunities. How do we overcome that identity, shall we say politics, or identity crisis, or no, it's not crisis, identity politics that drives virtually everything in the country?
Well, first of all, by accepting we're all human beings, that we happen to be where we are, more by accident than by design, that each one of us, the needs of one are the needs of all. If we are able to inculcate that culture into our minds, and then we now come to see that look, and you cannot be a complete person until your neighbor is also a complete person.
That's right.
Now, if we now move toward that, the problem is that the elite, or rather those who are in a position of power, either wittingly or unwittingly, they tend to feel that the only way they can perpetuate themselves is by ensuring that they allow these fault lines or these issues to be at play, so that, you know, whatever will give them a relative advantage. And I think if we are to really go and build a nation, first of all, we have to accept that it doesn't, breaking ourselves into smaller and smaller and smaller bits will not work. We just have, I'll give you an example. Now, we had the first set of states we had were 12. We had Lagos. Lagos remained the only state that has been there from 1967 to date. And is it really also by coincidence that it is the only state that is viable, that remains to be viable up to today? Why? Because it has remained. Over time, Lagos has been able to forge an identity. It has forged a unity. It has forged a system.
So what is stalling other states?
Why? Because we think that the only way to address the issue is fragmentation, that we continue breaking ourselves, drawing ourselves into cocoons. Yeah. I think that is, until we really address that issue head on, we'll continue to be where we are.
All right, Senator Ada, thank you very much. Let's get back to Lagos. We'll see have Professor Sofio Luwole. Now, there are issues already being tabled by all guests here alongside what we've had in the last 2 days. Aspects of disengagement and definitely what needs to be done in actually forging that identity that we so much desire. Something happened definitely before leaders actually got together. Years past before some of us were actually born, and it was actually the quest to actually set for us the unity and to stabilize what they had then. What exactly is stalling that same principle of having this unity being forged with present-day elites alongside other Nigerians?
Thank you very much. I think I appreciate the contribution from the brilliant scholar from Jos, but there's something I think he missed. One of the speakers has said that when Nigeria started, the North had the right to say, I am not ready for independence. In 1947, when 3 regions were created, the Northern region has the House of Assembly, the Western region has the Assembly, Eastern region said we are not ready until 1959. There are differences. Unity does not mean I must do everything you do at the same time you are doing it. I must identify my own region. I'm not talking of tribalism or so. Each group must determine how they want to move, when they want to move, and in which directions. Not that you must force everybody to take the same step at the same time. The justice is talking about. Justice means recognizing my rights and appreciating it. My freedom. My right to decide what things I think is wrong for my area. We had only 3 regions. We were moving at 3 different groups. The West has a program that was not exactly the same thing as the Northern one. Until we now have 36, where everybody is supposed to be doing everything. But there's another problem we are not facing. The Western democracy that we are operating makes it compulsory that every state must have at least 2 opposing parties, political parties. There must be 2. And when one is ruling, the other one must be opposing it, whether it's doing the right thing or not. Not only that, you can remember the case of Obama. He wanted to do a program, and the opponents said he cannot do it because it's their program. Why should it be your program? A program that is good for Nigeria, it does not mean because UPN is doing it, or APC is doing it, or PDP. These are the issues that we should arise. I think the point that everybody on this program today has made is that we have not studied our history. If you don't know our back, if you don't know the historical development of this country, we will not appreciate the problems of stability, we will not know the sources, and we will not know in what direction to look for unity. And that's why I was saying, stability does not mean that we must do the same thing, but we must come together. Unity means we must negotiate. It doesn't mean that we must do everything at the same time and on the same level. I think our problem is that we are too westernized. Our cultural, our tradition is not exactly. Africans appreciate the existence of opponents, but not somebody you must always fight against. I think this country now is out to fight even some program because some parties are proposing it. Is that stability? Is that unity? Does it mean because I belong to another party, anything I do must be wrong? Does it mean that it must be right because I'm in power? This is what I mean by stability. Means understanding your tradition, how you move through the processes, the political system you are running, before you can even know where you are going. I think the political system we are running, which is Western, it is making it more difficult for Nigerian youth to move forward because they are trying to copy America and Britain, not looking at Nigeria. As somebody said on this program this morning, that if you come to a place in Yoruba and you don't see an Igbo and Hausa man there, then it's not a Yoruba place. On individual basis, we are ready to unite. But when politics came in, it is then we are talking of distributing the economy position, members of house and so on, and you must fight and you must destroy. I think these are the problems. I think we must come home. One, study our culture. Our culture is not perfect. Know what is good in our culture, what is not good. Look at what we have brought in that is good and not good, and ask students to think about how can we move forward. Unity does not mean doing the same thing without argument. There's no society, even Somalia, there must be disagreement, even if they have this. But unity means appreciating differences, accommodating each other, negotiating, and moving forward. And these are the areas, I cannot give you details of everything, but those are the areas you must think about, that differences does not mean fighting. It does not mean I must not appreciate your own. It doesn't mean that we must unite and do everything. No. Differences can accommodate stability. It can move at different rates, but I think we are too theoretical about movement. It's something Nigeria is 36 states. Every state is, Ekiti State now is fighting because it's PDP. Yet, it is part of this country. Let me repeat. Stability means appreciating each other, not being the same. No, it is because you are stable because you can accommodate each other. Unity does not mean sharing the same opinion and doing exactly the same thing. No. You must see my contribution and your cooperation, and we put it together so this country can move on. So what I'm saying is that this is a country with differences that can be accommodated, where we can negotiate so that we can collaborate and work towards the improvement of this country. Differences does not mean disunity. It does not mean we must destabilize.
Yeah, I was blessing. This is a very thoughtful remarks there from Professor Sophia Oluwole. Professor Sophia Oluwole, being paraphrased, what you just indicated is that unity does not mean uniformity. And that stability itself doesn't also mean uniformity, but stability can derive from accommodation of known and acknowledged differences. We'd like to thank you for your thoughts. Now, let's come back again to our Abuja studios, Mr. Daria Woniyi. Back again to some of the points that have been articulated with regard to what we need to do to enhance national unity as well as stability. From your perspective, how significant is the management of the political economy in all of this?
Well, you see, when we discuss things like this, there is a long list by most people of what is the problem, why the problem came about, but there's very little said about what is the solution, especially as to why those solutions must be taken. I agree with the man in just most, Mr. Chris, in most of what he said. And of course, Prof in Lagos has articulated it very well. Our differences should not be division. We must agree that we're different. We have borrowed a system from the West, and she emphasized it quite well. And that system in itself, in its fundamental self, democracy is flawed. Democracy is the best way of giving representation that can be empirically judged. But in reality, democracy, in its purest sense, is the anarchy of the majority over the minority. The losers are going to be ruled by the winners. In our situation, what democracy has done is that it has translated even into economic power, into political power, and we have said the loser cannot come to the center where everything is being shared. The winner shares everything. Because individually we have not developed people. We have not developed our youth. We have an education system that is designed primarily to alienate. We produce graduates we cannot employ because we don't prepare for them. It's not wrong for people to go to school. It's not wrong. We need it. But we must educate correctly. We must begin afresh and look at what our leaders are doing wrong. And they are doing many things wrong. Because leadership is not about occupying a space. It's about moving people forward. It's about leading people. When I was younger, I used to look at the structure in the West, and I used to crack jokes and say, look, in the West, the people know where they want to go. They assign their leader responsibility to take them there. And if he doesn't, they remove him and bring somebody else. That is fantastic. But even in the West today, we have lost it. They have lost it. In the North, we used to go back home and take instructions. In the East, the system was to make a lot of noise about being Republican and then going back to cultural and all sorts of divisions, because everybody is competing for scarce resources. Because these resources are being competed for with so much brutality, the leadership, the person who gets to leadership is the person who can articulate how I can benefit from these scarce resources. That's the person I follow. Now, if he now sets up, because he cannot show me how I'm going to get there. He tells me that the other man is going to cheat me because he's not from my tribe. And then begin to teach and reinforce the idea that the rights of the other man must be abused for me to be able to keep.
Yes,
success.
that's the point, Mr. Awoniyi.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry. You see, this is part of what Mr. Wodo said, yes, and what Senator Ida, yes, and others have articulated. We are saying, this is what we are seeing now on the Nigerian table.
Yes.
And these are issues that, of course, continue to affect the nation's unity and stability. How can we get away from this, shall we say, rough play?
First of all, for our education and enlightenment, this is one of the few countries where people do not know their rights. And we are not bothering to teach anybody their rights. I believe strongly that the rights as entrenched in the Constitution would have been enough. But when you look at the American experience, those rights had to be taken out and collated into what they call a Bill of Rights. So it is simple for everybody to see. Now, everybody belongs within the context of his own rights. So he has an identity that he can defend. And he is sure that the system, don't forget that even the black man in America had 400 years of slavery, torture, horrible, but he still believes in the system because of the Bill of Rights. We don't have that here. Two, we don't teach any form of tangible civics to our people. We don't allow our children to understand that you are not different.
Mr. Awoniyi, well, thanks a lot. Well, civics, I took courses in civics when I was in elementary school, and it's been introduced. I believe probably that's the same thing, the same thing with you. So, but I wasn't the one that removed civics from the curriculum. It wasn't the pupils themselves who removed.
It was the leaders.
All right, so let's return to Benin Network Center. Honorable Patrick Obayagbo, of course, you've been listening to the other guests. In terms of having a clear vision as to where we want Nigeria of our dream to be, what is it that we need to do so that, as some of the guests have also indicated, there will be social justice and there will be social mobility, and then less emphasis on identity matters that at the moment tend to exacerbate the tensions with regard to unity and stability. Where do we want to go to, and how do we want to get there? And can we have the elite class and the other stakeholders mobilized to get to Nigeria of our dream, united and stable, but not necessarily uniform?
For me, beyond social justice, there must be economic justice. That is at the root That is at the root of agitations in the country. The British jurist and philosopher Albert Van Dicey talked about the rule of law. There must be rule of law in this country. There must be supremacy of the law of the land. The difference between, one of the differences between the developed society and developing society is the fact that we relate with the rule of law as it suits our whims and caprices. There must be rule of law. For me, I do not believe that the political elites are ready to commit class suicide yet. And because the political elites are not ready to commit class suicide, we must constitutionalize and give legal teeth to what are our noble aims and aspirations. And that is where the clamor for restructuring and devolution of powers come into the picture. Never mind that the idiot restructuring has today become a buzzword for both very sublime and pristine thinkers and even those who are politically shattered, tattered, battered, and tattooed. The truth remains is that if this country must make progress, we must devolve powers. And if you want me to speak to some specificities in the devolution of powers and remove it from its nebulous realm like the hanging garden of Babylon, I would say straight away that I am of the firm view that the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy in our constitution should be given a legal teeth. It has become a high time where it should be made justiciable. Secondly, we must look at the public policy and fiscal federalism side of our federation. I am imparting material in Cabudo Simulacrum with the recommendations of the National Confab that posited that we must rejig our revenue allocation formula. And it was stated that the state should have 35%, local government 22.5%, and the federal government 42.5%. I equally believe, and I'm equal of the firm view, that minerals should be divested completely from the monopolistic hold in the exclusive legislative list. Put this in the concurrent list. And provide 5% of our national budget yearly to prospect for mineral deposits. The presidency of the country should be rotated for a period of time among the 6 geopolitical regions. You must equally federalize security matters. A situation where Abuja sits in Mountain Olympus and expect that they know grassroots policing is no longer realizable. I am equally surprised that the National Assembly thought that INEC should not conduct local government elections. Are we federalizing, or we are unitarizing? So until we divest the federal government and the center of its Santa Claustic and narcissistic, mobocratic and kakistocratic centrism, and make the center less attractive to go to, we will continue to have a nihilistic, a violent, and an apolitical disposition towards fight and struggle for power at the center. So I believe we must begin to have an incremental devolution of powers. That is the only way to go.
Honorable Patrick Obahiagbo, Well, that will bring you down from your mountain Olympus, like you pointed out. Thank you very much. We appreciate your contribution.
Yeah, well, we are blessing, of course. I mean, from what you listen to him say, he has already battered the subject matter, tattered it, and politically tattooed it.
Tattooed it.
All right, Patrick Obayagmo, of course, he's not disappointed just yet, but we have reactions coming in from our viewers with regard to the comments that have been made by the guests. Festus Akimboyewa has this too. It says, Patrick Obayagmo is speaking from the heart, but his words are too big for us. So, Patrick Obayagmo, maybe you have to give us, you have to water it down from the Santa Claustic perspective that you have been providing this morning. I agree religion has played a major role in Nigeria's problems. That's Festus Akimboyewa right here.
Speaking from the heart, really, and other...
Nathaniel Shock.
Nathaniel Shock has this tweet: when individual interests override the national interest, the outcome will be greed, corruption, and that will hinder national peace. Okay, that's where it ends.
All right. Clifford Agogo SC has this tweet. I'm proposing that if we are serious about having a truly stable and prosperous nation, that we establish the National Institute for and make it mandatory for all leaders, religious, political, and economic, and more, to take relevant courses.
Chibuzo Jonathan says corruption has killed our national stability.
And then Emmanuel George, the problem of Nigeria is economic enterprise, not based on proper representation to reflect the dynamics of citizens and merit.
Sani Michael Omakoji has another tweet: until our leaders do away with nepotism and champagne patriotism with every glare of sincerity, hate speeches continues unabated.
All right, then we have this from Nancy. Thanks to the words of Honorable Patrick, that's quoting him now, religion is the greatest stumbling block to the unity of Nigeria.
Eddie Weezy has a tweet: until Nigerian politicians let go of their greed, stability will be a foreign language to Nigeria. M.O.D.
Francis, now you can't create unity without the right education system. The greatness problem we have in this country is the bad educational system.
Looking at other differences, Moses Akpan says poultry farming in the south can be personal business, while cattle rearing in the north becomes a national business and claiming innocent lives.
Emmanuel George again says, we're so delighted, that's MTA, we're so delighted that you, NTA, and your colleagues are brave to do justice to this subject. Hope they will listen. God bless us all.
From Awal Bashiri's just tweet, he said, Chris Ngodo is a nationalist. Nations are built on quest for self-actualization. Diversity in any nation is natural.
All right, now this is the second set of tweets. Of course, we know that we have, to quote Honorable Igodomi Godo, we have a ceaseless staccato of tweets this morning, but of course, that's the much that we'll be able to take. We're going over now to Just Network Studios. Chris Ngodo, let's get your closing thoughts on this conversation segment. Closing thoughts, obviously, because the subject matter remains virtually open-ended. What can we do? We have identified the problems with regard to the failure of the elite class in seeking to help us build a nation of our dreams where there is unity and where there is stability, provided, of course, we enter the caveat by Professor Sophie Olowole that unity doesn't mean uniformity.
I think that by way of solutions, there are a number of things that we can do that are practical things. We can start engaging on these levels immediately. First of all, as I said earlier, the terms of political competition themselves mandate the kind of ethnocentrism and the kind of bigotry and prejudice that we see, because these are the things it takes to access social and economic opportunity. So we have to change the terms of political competition. We have to change the fundamental pillars of our political economy. We have to change that. In practical terms, if you look at Nigeria, it's a country of 36 states. About 35 of them are technically insolvent, technically bankrupt. And this is so because at the state level, there's really no incentive for good governance. There's no incentive for a governor outside of whatever transactional arrangements he made in the course of electioneering. Once he gets into office, there's no longer any incentive to do good governance. And the reason is simple. The states themselves do not primarily rely on internally generated revenue. They rely on oil rents from Abuja. Our politics is fundamentally a competition for oil rent. So what you have to do is to eliminate that disincentive for development. development. So we have to now look at reducing the quantum of oil rents available to states and begin to shift them towards greater self-reliance, begin to shift them towards dependence on revenue and resources that have been internally generated. Now, this will have a knock-on effect in one important sense. The reason why you have the indigene-settler dichotomy is because people are competing for access to oil rents funneled through states. Once you take away that incentive, once you take away oil rents being funneled to the states for doing nothing, then the discourse shifts from indigenes and settlers to simply having citizens. A state will no longer depend, therefore, on rents coming from the federal government. It will take a keener interest in the entrepreneurial abilities of the citizens in its own state, of the residents in its states. In other words, all that it wants will be talent. So we will move from competing for oil rents to competing for talent and human capital. And that will change the dynamic of coexistence within the states. But what is fundamental is that as it stands, we have 35 bankrupt states. We have to make the states productive hubs. And in order to do that, you have to now take away this terrible incentive or disincentive for development, which is simply monthly oil allocations, oil rent allocations from Abuja. Secondly, we need to educate citizens. We need to raise citizens that are competent enough to operate or to function in a plural society, to function in a diverse society. These are it's not that there is, as I said earlier, while I do not believe that most Nigerians viscerally hate people of other ethnicities and faiths, there is no doubt that we have a problem with prejudice, we have problems of bigotry and all of that. And so some of these things have to be dealt with through education. The process of socialization in this society has tended to push a group of people or a segment of the population towards these antisocial, nihilistic pathologies. And so we need an education, a process of education most likely by way of a civics curriculum that orientates Nigerians towards the demands, the responsibilities and dynamics of living in a plural society and in a diverse society. I also think that we need to begin to talk now in terms of a social compact. What can a Nigerian citizen reasonably expect from the Nigerian state? And I find, as the Honorable mentioned, I think that Chapter 2, Directive Principles and Objectives of State Policy, is a very critical document. And I think that making it justiciable has to be one of the paramount political struggles for this generation. We have to make Chapter 2 of our Constitution, where you have outlined social and economic rights, where you have the basis of an egalitarian society practically distilled and highlighted. We have to make that chapter justiciable. It has to be, we have to make it possible to hold the government responsible and accountable for the execution of the mandate in Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution. So if you have Chapter 2 and you have Chapter 4, where you have political rights in Chapter 4, civil liberties, and you have social and economic rights in Chapter 2, this would constitute what we might describe as our own Bill of Rights. And then finally, I would say that, I mean, we've discussed, in the course of our conversation, we've discussed how we've imported democracy and all of that. I would modify slightly and say that you have indigenous models of democracy. Pre-colonial Nigerian societies were not entirely autocratic. So among the Igbos of the southeast and the Tivs of the middle belt, you had something approximating democracy, very communitarian, very participatory. And I think that where the discourse will begin to move to is moving from the idea of representative democracy to participatory democracy. That is getting more people to take ownership of their destiny, to be able to exercise agency. And this means, again, we go back to the restructuring argument and we talk of more powers, but not just for states, but for local governments and municipalities, all the way down to the smallest subunit of administration we can find. We need to put power back in the people's hands, power to control their own destinies. Finally, I would say that there's this interesting anecdote, the conversation between Azikiwe and Ahmadu Bello, where Azikiwe said to Ahmadu Bello, let us forget our differences. And Ahmadu Bello said to him, you are an Igbo, you are an Easterner and a Christian, and I am a Muslim and a Northerner. Let us understand our differences. And I think that the struggle for us as a nation has swung between these two pillars, whether to forget our differences or whether to understand them. I think that the path to the future lies in merging these two approaches. We must understand our differences. We must educate ourselves to become attuned to our cultural differences. And in so doing, we will now gain the power to transcend them. And as Professor Oluwole said, differences do not have to become division. They do not even have to breed discord. But it is the intelligence with which we seek to understand them and how we master them and educate ourselves to get used to them that makes all the difference.
All right, Chris Nwodo there joining us from our Just Network studios. Deep appreciation for your insights in our conversation this morning.
Having me.
All right. Go very quickly now to Professor Sophie Oluwole for her closing thoughts. Professor Oluwole, just you have 30 seconds. We're sure you can manage that to get your closing thoughts on this very interesting conversation this morning.
Thank you very much. I am encouraged by the man from Jos. I just want to close on this, that we had democracy, not monarchy, before the Western man came. And allow me this Yoruba thing. Àgbà mẹ́rin ló ń ṣèlú, àgbà ọkùnrin, àgbà obìnrin, àgbà ọmọdé, àgbà àlejò. The West did not have that until 1948, where women were not even allowed to vote, not to hold positions. Participatory democracy was in most part of Nigeria before. If we go back to that, I think the future is brighter than before.
Professor Sophie Oluwole, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being with us on the program today. You joined us from our Lagos Network studios. All right, and then to Honorable Patrick Obayagmo. Patrick Obayagmo, well, thanks a lot. I mean, you've said a lot of things. Of course, you have tattooed the points. You've talked about the political bunkers and Epicureanism, hedonism, and then, of course, with the Santa Claustic perspective. What are your closing thoughts? In less than 15 seconds, we'll give Prof 30 seconds. We'll give you 15 seconds.
This is to comment to Nigerians, more particularly the political elites, the immortal words of the late Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, who was once quoted as saying that at all times, it is always better to war than to jojo. Thank you.
All right. On that note, we'd like to thank Honorable Patrick Obayagmo. We've had Siwo from you today, and we'll see from our Benin Network studios. A pleasure having you on the program. Okay, now let's come to our Abuja studios. Distinguished Senator Ida. Senator Ida, your closing thoughts?
Thank you very much.
Briefly as well.
I think we have to face the issue of restructuring the country squarely and constructively, based on, to me, 5 indices. 1, economic viability of states. These states must be viable. Secondly, the states and the federation should operate in a democratic manner, with the result that the people are, the leaders are accountable to the people. And then, the states should be given adequate constitutional powers to operate and take care of themselves, and with proportionate resources, of course. Then we should address the fear of domination. It is very important, because really it is what creates a lot of the problems. And then finally, the issue, we have to balance the desire for local resource control with that of the need for the viability of the the polity itself. We have to do that. If we do that, I think we'll reach...
Senator Ibrahim Ida Danmajan Katsina, a member of the 6th Senate of the National Assembly. We appreciate your contributions to our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
Also, closing thoughts from Mr. Daria Awoniyi, Development Consultant, briefly too.
Thank you very much. I think, my own case, I agree with the man in Jos. I agree with Prof. And I think we need to understand some things. The bill, or a bill of rights. Our rights must be codified. Every Nigerian, whatever we do, must know that he has rights in his own language, in his own culture, in a way that he understands. 2, We must educate our people. We must educate them in the civics of being a part of a nation, and we must bring them into the Commonwealth. If I belong and I have a vested interest in what is happening, I will not try to destroy it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dari Awoni, Development Consultant. Again, we appreciate your contributions to our discussion this morning. Of course, Blessing, it's been a hot one. Very interesting.
Ceaseless staccato.
Staccato of political
That's our package on Good Morning Nigeria for today. Before Kingsley returns to a political bunker, let's see you tomorrow for another interesting edition. My name is Blessing Abu. Good Morning Nigeria has been great. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Kingsley Osadola, we appreciate your being with us on the program this morning. See you tomorrow, as Blessing said.